What separates people who succeed wildly from those who merely dream? Is it luck? Is it talent? Or is it something far more powerful hidden in plain sight? The truth may surprise you, because when you look closely at the world's most successful people, you'll discover they aren't always the most gifted or the most connected. Many of them started with nothing, no money, no network, no guarantees, yet they rose, they thrived, and they built legacies that still inspire us today. So, what did they know that others didn't? The answer, as Brendon Burchard reveals, is shockingly simple. It's not resources that determine your future. It's not luck that shapes your destiny. It's how you think. Your thoughts shape your identity. Your identity drives your actions, and your actions create your results. But here's the twist. Most people don't even realize how their thoughts are holding them back. They live in patterns of doubt, fear, and limitation, never questioning the silent voice inside that says, I can't. Brendon knows this better than anyone. Long before he became one of the world's leading high-performance coaches, he was broke, struggling, and unsure of his path. He had no special skills, no wealthy background, no shortcut to success. What he had was a decision, the decision to think differently. Instead of repeating, I don't know how, he asked, how can I learn? Instead of saying, I don't have that, he declared, then I'll build it. This shift in thinking wasn't just motivational fluff. It was a turning point. It was the very thing that transformed his life from bankruptcy to building one of the most respected personal development brands in the world. Now, here's the part most people miss. Incredibly successful people don't wait for clarity to magically appear. They create it. They don't wait for confidence to show up. They generate it. They don't wait for opportunity. They prepare themselves so fully that when opportunities come, they're ready. This is a truth Brendon teaches again and again. Success is not an accident. It is a mindset practiced daily until it becomes who you are. Think about this. Every time you told yourself, I'm not that kind of person, or I'll never figure this out, you were locking the door on your own potential. But successful people don't think that way. They don't see barriers as dead ends. They see them as invitations to learn, to grow, to become someone new. This is what Brendon calls the power of becoming. You don't wait to magically feel successful. You decide to be the kind of person who can succeed, and then you act in alignment with that decision. And here's a lesser-known fact about Brendon's journey. When he first started teaching online, he didn't know how to design a website. He didn't know how to build an email list. He didn't even know how to film himself on camera, but he didn't stop. He taught himself one step at a time. He learned coding late into the night. He figured out how to capture subscribers when no one knew his name. He failed again and again, but each failure was fuel. Each mistake taught him something new. That is the mindset that separates dreamers from doers. The refusal to let ignorance or fear be the final word. So why should you watch this video till the very end? Because in the next few minutes, you're going to discover how incredibly successful people actually think, the shifts they make that most people never consider. You'll learn how they flip self-doubt into determination, how they transform fear into courage, and how they turn uncertainty into unstoppable progress. You'll see how Brendon himself applied these principles, not in theory, but in the gritty, uncertain reality of his own life. And by the time we're done, you'll understand how you can begin to think the same way. Imagine what could happen if you stopped repeating the old stories that limit you. Imagine if you started asking, what would it look like if I tried instead of saying it's impossible? Imagine if, starting today, you gave yourself permission to learn, to grow, and to become the kind of person who achieves the things you've been dreaming of. That's the transformation waiting for you. Not someday, but right now. This is the difference Brendon reveals between those who barely survive and those who truly succeed. It's not the size of the dream that matters. It's the strength of the mindset behind it. And the good news is, you don't need to wait for permission. You don't need someone else to hand you the answers. You already have the power to choose new thoughts, new beliefs, and new actions that can set your life on a completely different course. So, welcome to Habits of Greatness. This is the place where we uncover the real principles that shape high achievers. If you're ready to step into a new way of thinking, if you're ready to take charge of your mindset and your future, then stay with us until the very end, because the insights you're about to hear may be the spark that changes everything for you. And before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community, because greatness is not reserved for the lucky few. It's a habit, and it starts with how you think. Before we talk about the way incredibly successful people think, we need to pause and ask a very simple but powerful question. What does success really mean? Because here's the truth. Most people chase success without ever defining it. They assume it means money. They assume it means fame. They assume it means material comfort or status. But if you listen closely to what the most accomplished people, including Brendon Burchard, teach, you'll realize that success is not about stacking up numbers in your bank account. It's about something much deeper, something that drives a person to keep going long after the money has been earned. Incredibly successful people see success as impact. They know that real achievement is measured by how many lives are touched, how much value is created, and how the world is left better than it was before. Money may come as a byproduct, but it's never the main prize. Think about it. If success were only about money, then the richest people in the world would automatically be the happiest, most fulfilled, and most respected. But we know that's not true. History is full of wealthy people who were miserable, disconnected, and forgotten. On the other hand, some of the most impactful individuals didn't start with financial wealth. They started with an obsession to contribute, to give, and to serve. That obsession made them wealthy in meaning long before it made them wealthy in dollars. Brendon Burchard often points out that consistency is another measure of real success. Anybody can be motivated for a week. Anybody can push themselves when things are easy or when they're excited. But incredibly successful people are consistent over the long haul. They show up again and again, not because they feel like it, but because they've committed to a purpose. They create routines that support their growth, habits that reinforce their progress, and systems that protect their energy. That's why their achievements stand out, not because they were brilliant in a single moment, but because they sustained excellence over time. And here's the part most people overlook. True success is always tied to purpose. Without purpose, the wins feel empty. Without purpose, the effort feels forced. But when you're driven by a sense of meaning, the work takes on a new level of energy. Purpose is what gets you out of bed when you're tired. Purpose is what gives you courage when fear shows up. Purpose is what keeps you consistent when distractions and temptations try to pull you off track. That's why Brendon teaches so much about clarity. He knows that without clarity of purpose, people drift. They chase shiny objects. They confuse being busy with being successful. And then years later, they wonder why they feel unfulfilled. So when we talk about someone being incredibly successful, we're not pointing only to their income. We're pointing to their influence. We're pointing to their discipline. We're pointing to the way they align their daily actions with their deepest value. Think of someone who has built a business. Yes, but also inspires others to rise. Think of someone who has achieved career milestones, but still prioritizes family, health, and contribution. That balance, that alignment, is a sign of true success. But here's something fascinating that Brendon often shares. Success is not a one-size-fits-all definition. Each person has to decide what success means for them. For one person, success might be building a global company. For another, it might be raising a family with love and stability. For another, it might be creating art that moves people. The point is not to copy someone else's version of success. The point is to define it for yourself with clarity, then pursue it with courage and consistency. And yet, even with personal definitions, there are common threads among those we call incredibly successful. They think in terms of legacy. They ask, what will remain after me? They think in terms of service. They ask, who will benefit from this? They think in terms of growth. They ask, who must I become in order to achieve this vision? These questions separate them from people who simply chase comfort. Comfort says, how can I get more for me? Success says, how can I grow so I can give more? Another aspect that Brendon highlights is energy. You can't talk about success without talking about the energy you bring to your days. Incredibly successful people protect their physical health, their mental focus, and their emotional state. Why? Because they know energy is the foundation of impact. You can have all the strategy in the world, but if you show up exhausted, distracted, or negative, your influence shrinks. So they build habits, exercise, meditation, journaling, planning that keep their energy high. That's why they're able to stay consistent when others burn out. Notice how this all ties back to something bigger than wealth. Money can amplify who you are, but it cannot replace purpose, consistency, or energy. In fact, many people chase money thinking it will buy them freedom, only to realize that freedom comes from mindset and discipline first. Brendon often tells the story of starting out broke, learning new skills, not because it was glamorous, but because it was necessary. The money didn't make him successful. The mindset did. The discipline did. The purpose did. The money came later as a reward for the value he had already created. Think about the word incredible. When we say someone is incredibly successful, we don't just mean big numbers. We mean something that almost feels unbelievable. We mean a story of transformation that inspires. We mean a level of contribution that changes lives. And the reason it feels incredible is because it stands out from the ordinary. The ordinary definition of success, chasing money, chasing recognition, feels shallow compared to the extraordinary definition, living with impact, with consistency, with purpose. And here's another insight Brendon shares: success is emotional as much as it is external. If you've ever hit a goal and still felt empty, you know what he means. That's because success is not just about achievement. It's about fulfillment. It's about whether you feel aligned, whether you feel proud of the way you're showing up, whether your work and your life match your deeper values. That inner congruence is what gives success its sweetness. Without it, even the biggest win feels hollow. This is why, before we can even talk about how successful people think, we must first understand what they aim for. They are not chasing surface wins. They are not simply chasing applause. They are chasing alignment. They are chasing growth. They are chasing the feeling of knowing they lived their truth and gave their best. That's the hidden layer beneath their achievements. That's why they keep going when others quit. Because their version of success is not temporary. It is woven into who they are becoming. When you look at Brendon's life, you see these elements clearly. He didn't rise to success because of shortcuts or secrets. He rose because he redefined success for himself. He decided it wasn't about impressing people. It was about impacting people. He decided it wasn't about one lucky break. It was about consistent habits that stacked up over years. He decided it wasn't about chasing wealth. It was about pursuing purpose and letting wealth follow as a side effect. So before we go any further into the mindset shifts, remember this: incredibly successful people have already done the hardest work. They've defined what success really means to them. They've broken free from society's shallow definitions. They've chosen depth over appearance, purpose over possessions, and consistency over chaos. That choice is what guides their thinking, their habits, and ultimately, their extraordinary results. Success is not an accident. Success is a mindset game. That's the truth. Brendon Burchard repeats again and again, and yet it is the truth so many people ignore. We think success belongs to the lucky, the gifted, or the people born into the right family. But if you study the world's top performers, you'll see something different. You'll see men and women who trained their minds before they trained anything else. Because most of success is not external. It's internal. It's how you use your psychology. It's how you direct your thoughts, shape your emotions, and guide your actions. The mind is the battleground where success is won or lost. Think about it. Every action you've ever taken started with a thought. Every risk you've taken, every dream you've pursued, every challenge you've overcome, it all started with a decision inside your head. And every time you've quit, every time you've played small, every time you've talked yourself out of something great, it was also because of the voice in your mind. That's why Brendon says success is 90% psychology and only 10% strategy. Because if your psychology is broken, you'll never use the strategy. But here's the problem. Most people don't realize they are stuck in limiting beliefs. They don't notice the self-talk that quietly shuts down their potential. How many times have you caught yourself saying things like, I don't have that, or I'm not like those people, or I don't know how to do that? It sounds harmless, but those phrases are deadly to success. They stop you before you even begin. They convince you that your limitations are permanent, that your identity is fixed, that your lack of resources defines your future. That is the trap that keeps most people from even trying. Incredibly successful people think differently. They don't deny reality. They just refuse to be defined by it. Instead of saying, I don't know how to do that, they say, then I'll learn. Instead of saying, I don't have that, they say, then I'll build it. Instead of saying, I'm not that kind of person, they say, then I'll become that kind of person. Do you see the difference? It's not about having everything figured out. It's about believing that you can figure it out. That shift from limitation to growth is the foundation of success. Brendon knows this from experience. When he started, he was bankrupt. He had no business background, no fancy connections, no money for marketing. He didn't even know how to build a website. But instead of saying, I can't, he said, I'll learn. So he stayed up late teaching himself how to design web pages. He figured out how to capture emails and build subscriber lists. He studied sales and marketing until he could apply it to his own work. No one gave him permission. No one handed him the skills. He took ownership of his learning. That's what successful people do. They don't wait for chances. They create them by growing into someone capable of seizing them. This is why Brendon talks so much about identity. At some point, you have to stop waiting for life to change and start becoming the kind of person who deserves the change you want. You don't wait to be confident. You don't wait to be qualified. You become the kind of person who takes action, who builds courage, who develops capability. That's identity transformation. That's the secret. The person you are today might not be the person who can achieve your dream, but you can design yourself into that person. This shift in identity requires commitment. It requires giving yourself permission to step into your best self. Most people wait for someone else to validate them. They wait for a teacher, a boss, a mentor, or even society to say, now you're ready. But incredibly successful people give themselves that permission. They stop wondering if this could ever happen for me, and they start asking, when will it happen and how will I make it so? That shift from if to when changes everything. It moves you out of doubt and into decision. And here's another truth. Successful people take action even when they're afraid, even when they don't know all the steps, even when the path isn't clear. Fear doesn't disappear. Doubt doesn't magically vanish. The difference is they don't let fear make the final decision. They act anyway. They treat uncertainty as part of the journey, not a stop sign. They understand that clarity comes through action, not before it. They understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. Brendon often says that most people live in cages built by their own thoughts. They wait to feel ready, but readiness never comes. They wait for fear to vanish, but fear is always there. They wait for the conditions to be perfect, but conditions are never perfect. That's why success is a mindset game. If you can master your thoughts, if you can flip limitation into growth, if you can own your learning, design your identity, and give yourself permission, then nothing can stop you. Because then no matter what resources you lack, you will find a way. Think about his story again. From bankruptcy to building a multi-million-dollar brand that impacts millions of people worldwide. How did it happen? Not because someone handed him an opportunity. Not because he had everything figured out. It happened because he mastered the game of mindset. He chose growth over limitation. He chose ownership over excuses. He chose identity over circumstance. He chose action over fear. And that is why he teaches this message so relentlessly. The mindset game is not theory. It's real. It's practical. It's the foundation of everything else. Because once you control your mind, you can control your focus. Once you control your focus, you can control your habits. And once you control your habits, you can control your results. That's the chain reaction. That's the process. And it all begins in your psychology. So when you hear Brendon say that success is a mindset game, remember this: the people who succeed are not the ones who never doubt or never fear or never struggle. They are the ones who choose their thoughts on purpose. They are the ones who refuse to live in limitation. They are the ones who build themselves into the person their dream requires. And that game is played every single day in the conversations you have with yourself, in the beliefs you choose to hold, and in the actions you take despite not knowing all the answers. That is why success is not luck. That is why success is not reserved for the few. That is why success is possible for anyone willing to master the mindset game. Once the mindset begins to shift, something powerful happens. Successful people stop drifting and start directing their lives with clarity. They set clear goals. They don't just talk about vague dreams or say, someday I'll do that. They define exactly what they want, why it matters, and when they will achieve it. That precision separates those who wish from those who win. Goals give you a compass. They turn the energy of motivation into the structure of a plan. Without clear goals, energy is scattered. With them, energy is focused like a laser. But goal setting alone is not enough. Successful people put their goals on schedule. They don't just write them down and forget. They translate them into actions, deadlines, and habits. They block time for learning, for growth, for building. They make sure progress is not accidental, but intentional. Tracking becomes part of the process. They measure what matters. They ask themselves, am I moving forward or just staying busy? That kind of honesty keeps them on course when others get lost in distraction. This is where identity and standards come into play. Brendon Burchard teaches that real transformation is not about having more goals, it's about raising your personal standards. Anyone can set a goal, not everyone raises the standard for how they live each day. Successful people hold themselves to a higher level of clarity, energy, emotional drive, influence, productivity, and courage. Those 6 habits, as Brendon lays out, are not optional extras. They are the foundation of high performance. Clarity means you know who you are and what you want. Energy means you protect your health and vitality so you can show up strong. Emotional drive means you stay connected to meaning and purpose, not just mechanics. Influence means you inspire and uplift those around you. Productivity means you focus on the few things that matter most, not the endless list of trivial tasks. And courage means you take bold action even when you're scared. Raising your standards means you no longer tolerate mediocrity from yourself. You stop making excuses. You stop waiting for motivation to arrive. You stop saying, that's just the way I am. Instead, you set higher rules for how you think, how you work, and how you treat people. And then you practice self-monitoring. This is something most people never do, but successful people do constantly. They check in with themselves. Am I living my values today? Am I keeping my promises to myself? Am I acting like the person I want to become? This kind of self-awareness is what keeps them aligned when others lose track of who they are. Alongside standards, there is something else: obsession and passion. You cannot become incredibly successful if you are only half interested in your craft. The people who rise to the top care deeply. They are obsessed with their mission. They think about it constantly. They study it, practice it, and refine it. This is not unhealthy. It's necessary, because mastery takes time, and only obsession fuels you through the long hours, the failures, the frustrations. Passion is the spark, but obsession keeps the fire burning. The key is that their passion is aligned with their values. That's why it's sustainable. If you're obsessed with something that doesn't matter to your soul, you burn out. But if your passion is connected to your purpose, it energizes you instead of draining you. That alignment creates a powerful force. It turns work into meaning. It turns obstacles into fuel. It turns effort into joy. That's why the most successful people don't just grind mindlessly. They love what they're building because it reflects who they are and what they believe. There's another shift that separates winners from wishers: necessity versus preference. For most people, success is a preference. They want it. They would like it, but they can live without it. For incredibly successful people, success becomes a necessity. It's not a nice to have, it's a must. When you cross that line, everything changes. When success becomes necessary, you stop dabbling. You stop procrastinating. You stop making excuses. You become resourceful. You find a way because you must. That sense of necessity drives discipline, focus, and resilience. It makes you act when others wait. It keeps you moving when others quit. And here's the truth. Necessity is something you can create. It comes from attaching deep meaning to your goals. It comes from deciding that your dream is no longer optional. It comes from seeing how your success impacts others, not just yourself. When you feel responsible for your family, your community, your mission, success stops being about preference. It becomes your duty. And duty is one of the strongest motivators in the human spirit. Along the way, successful people also learn to debunk the myths that keep most people stuck. The first myth is that you need perfect conditions to begin. That is false. Waiting for perfect timing is just procrastination in disguise. Every successful person starts messy, imperfect, and unready. The second myth is that success only comes to those with natural talent. Talent matters less than effort, discipline, and practice. Skills can be learned, and most of the world's great performers built their mastery through deliberate work, not natural genius. The third myth is that you must be confident before you start. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it is a result. You gain it through action, not before action. Breaking these myths frees you. It reminds you that you don't need more luck, more talent, or more certainty. You need more courage, more standards, and more follow-through. That's all. And the best part, you can start today. You don't need to wait for a big opportunity. You don't need to wait for everything to be clear. You can begin by identifying one limiting belief that has been holding you back and flipping it. Instead of saying, I don't know how, say I will learn how. You can schedule one block of time this week dedicated to growth. Read, practice, or build something. You can decide who you want to be, not just what you want to have. If you want to be more disciplined, act disciplined today. If you want to be more confident, take one bold step today. Small daily habits compound into transformation. That is the way successful people move forward. They set goals with clarity, they raise their standards, they fuel themselves with passion and necessity. They reject myths that weaken the average person, and then they take small but deliberate steps each day, aligning themselves with their vision until the extraordinary becomes their normal. Success is not just about strategies or secrets, it's about the way you think. We've talked about mindset, belief, identity, and action, the four forces that shape every result in your life. The truth is simple. When you change your thinking, you change everything. Your habits shift, your confidence grows, your future opens. You already have the power inside you. The only question is, will you use it? Pick one idea from this video, just one, and apply it today. Flip a limiting belief. Take a bold step. Act like the person you're becoming, not the person you used to be. That single decision could be the spark that changes your path forever. If this message spoke to you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Habits of Greatness. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that their mindset can change their destiny. Together, let's build a community where greatness becomes a daily habit.